Hi, everyone. My name is Nir Shafir, and I am your professor for HINE 109. Um, and this class is covering the history of the Ottoman Empire. Now, first, before I begin, this class is online. It's asynchronous, and it has a live component, but it's still online, that will meet Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. For about an hour. Um, but for the most part, um, there's no obligation to show up on time or fully arrive to these classes. So most of the material you'll have will be, again, pre-recorded lectures, there'll be podcasts, and other things. And this is, in a sense, an experiment for me. As you may know, this is the first time I'm teaching summer session. It's also the first time I'm teaching asynchronously online. And it will be an experiment in different ways of assigning exam material and so forth. Now, this is a class about the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire is my specific area of focus and research. So even though I'm the guy who is responsible for teaching everything about the Middle East between, let's say, 500 and 1800, the period that I focus on is essentially the Middle East and the Balkans between 1400 or 1500 and 1800. Now, why is that interesting? Why do you care about the Ottoman Empire? Maybe you signed up for this class just because it was available. It fits the bill as a prerequisite or not. Or maybe you actually already know something about the Ottoman Empire. But for those of you that don't know anything about the Ottoman Empire, I'm not going to try to convince you necessarily that it's the best thing in the world, but I do want to tell you essentially why it's important in some ways. First and foremost, that essentially the Ottoman Empire ruled most of the Middle East. At its height, as we'll see in a later section where we look at the map, it extended all the way almost to Vienna in the northeast, up to the Russian steppe in the north, off to the Caucasus and Iran and the other side, not including Iran, but up to the border of Iran, and included, basically parts of essentially Iraq and Yemen. Egypt, Anatolia, much of the Balkans, and the North African coast. So for much of the period, basically from 1400 to 1500 on to 1922, when it formally ended, the Ottoman Empire was, in a sense, synonymous with the Middle East. And one of the things I like about studying the past, especially the past of the Middle East, is that in today's world, when the Middle East is often the most depressing and difficult area to speak about. This is a period in which actually the Middle East and the Ottoman Empire was essentially one of the centers of the world, alongside probably Beijing and perhaps Delhi. Essentially a much bigger and more important place than Paris or London. And one of the things that I want to cover, and this is basically what was the culture that arose there. And one of the things we have to keep in mind, of course, is that the Ottoman Empire does not mean Turkey. Today, the people of Turkey claim the Ottoman Empire is their legacy. In fact, people in the Ottoman Empire, for the most part, at least the government, spoke Turkish, slightly different form of Turkish spoken in Turkey today. But it extended all over the Middle East, and it left its mark throughout the area. And in fact, many of the things that we know about the Middle East in general during, let's say, the way the Middle East is now, is to some degree a product of transformations that were occurring during this earlier period, what we call the early modern period, right? Because it becomes before the modern period, and it presages the arrival of certain developments. And so in order to essentially understand what happens in the modern Middle East, it's incredibly important to figure out what's happening in the early modern and pre-modern Middle East. So that's my quick take on why the Ottoman Empire is important. And throughout this class, what we're going to be doing is essentially trying to understand to some degree why is it that the structures that the Ottoman Empire imposed on the Middle East continued and sometimes didn't continue, and how they essentially tied to the modern day Middle East, even though it's not necessarily the clearest connection, as always. And at the same time, we're also just going to try to understand the Ottoman Empire in its own terms, to try and understand, for example, the institution of slavery, what it meant to be a slave back then, how central it was or not, how did non-Muslims live and work and engage in Ottoman society, what was their role, what were their rights and their positions, and so forth. So we're going to try to get a fuller understanding of Ottoman society, or really Middle Eastern society, in this period in its many different ways. Now, to get through the basics of what this class is going to cover, I am going to now share my screen, which you should not be seeing this, but should be seeing something else. Sorry, this one. Here we go. This is the syllabus that you will be able to find on Canvas if you go to this class. I'm still in the process of fully setting it up. There are basically a few different pieces. I've taken my usual course and kind of squished it into 5 weeks. That means it's always twice the amount of reading as normal. Again, this is a class that is online, is asynchronous, has an optional live session at Thursday, 10:30 a.m. That is, except for this week. This week we'll be having on Wednesday because Thursday is a holiday. First week we're going to basically cover pre-Ottoman Anatolia and the rise of nomadic empires, like those of the Mongols, different Turkish groups. Week 2 is the rise of the Ottoman Empire itself, what it actually meant, how did it transform from a frontier principality to something more solid and long-lasting. Week 3 is basically when the Ottoman Empire reaches its kind of global peak, when it's kind of fighting shadow wars in Southeast Asia and trying to attack Vienna, and also under the rule of its kind of most famous sultan, the Sultan Suleiman. Week 4, we're going to be talking about basically the massive changes that in the structure of the empire and society that had to undergo during the 1600s. And in week 5, we're going to be talking a bit about the 18th century, the 1700s, and what was daily life and culture like, what was the world of non-Muslims like, and so forth. This class has basically, let me see, where did I put it? 4 components. One is the podcasts. There is a podcast assignment, which are worth 10. I'm asking you to do 10% of the grade. I'm asking you to do 4 out of the about 12 podcasts available here. You basically go through here, you click on this. This will take you to the link to the Ottoman History Podcast, where you can see, which is a podcast that I have been heavily involved with, less so more recently, but I was previously editor-in-chief of it and recorded about 60 to 70 episodes. And we should basically interview academics about their research. Now, some of these episodes are a bit old, I mean like 6, 7 years old, but you can go through it. It's still going on today. We're still putting out new episodes. And in fact, if you were to go to our episode lists, okay, there hasn't been one since April, but people are still putting on various things, not just about Ottoman history. It's about basically all Middle Eastern history in different ways and forms. So what I'm asking you to do is basically pick some of those, listen to them, and fill out the worksheet before the end of the week for that week. Okay, so let me see if this will work. So if you, okay, I've closed the responses here, but you should be able to go through and basically just asks you to say, what did you like about the episode? What you think could be improved, to rate it on a scale of 1 to 5, and to also say like what questions were left unanswered in your mind. Okay. And the readings are significant, but not hopefully overwhelming. We are going to basically speak about, there's basically different sets of readings. There's different primary sources for each week. There's podcasts, and there'll be lectures here that I will be filling in with recordings, okay? Otherwise, the last thing to do is the Hodge game, which if you go to assignments, you can find here. The Hodge game is a game, a very simple text-based game run by a colleague, created it. It will have you play loads. Going to be the instructions. It's basically a simulation of an Ottoman subject going on the Hajj. What is the Hajj? It's the pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina. This was actually an incredibly difficult and long thing. It's not just like today, where you fly in and bake in the heat while you go to Mecca and Medina. Basically, you had to travel from either the Balkans or from Istanbul or on occasion Damascus onwards. So you basically pick your role. The easiest one is the princess because she has the most money, but there's different people who can use this, and you can challenge yourself by basically playing different people and trying to make money while you're also on the road, while also visiting shrines and things, and while ultimately coming in time for the Hajj itself. Let's say you want to be a Sufi, which we'll talk about what that is. You go through, you say what you are, you have different challenges. And as you go through this, you can be, I would suggest make sure to have a water warning, and if you get too hard, to get avoid water and food decay. Should generally start in Istanbul, and then you move through and you can read about what is Istanbul. Each time we'll have a historical account that will explain to you different things here, like what is the Surah. And each time you basically get a choice. Here you can choose whether to pay the chief eunuch to be on basically the list of recipients of welfare funds when you reach Mecca and Medina. And you have to pay in order to get listed. You can decide to refuse to pay, and then you move on. So then there's different things. Each time you have to make sure you have enough water and food. You can visit religious sites to get, piety points. You can go to a bathhouse or coffee house, listen to the gossip, etc., and continue. And then ultimately you can continue on your journey in different ways. Okay. You may ask me, I die constantly on this game. How far do I proceed? I ask that students get at least 30 days on and make sure to take a screenshot when you finish so that I know that you've completed it. All I'm asking you to do is basically play this game, tell me what you actually did, what you did learn from this game, and basically tie that in with some of the readings, which include one article that I wrote and other material. Okay. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. Let's go back to the syllabus. There's a midterm essay, a final essay, which I'll be grading a bit more harshly because of the rise of ChatGPT. But if you do the readings and you integrate the readings into your essays, you should be doing fine. The essays, I will release them soon. The midterm I'll try to release. I think it's already actually up there. So if you go to assignments, okay, so it's going to be available soon. You can't see this right now, but it's there. It'll be available by morning time. And afterwards, everything else will be possible. So if you have any questions, email me. If not, talk to me on Wednesday with a live session. And I look forward to meeting those of you that do decide to come to the live session, which again is optional. It's just there for those who want interaction and discussion and want to speak to the professor. I look forward to meeting you on Wednesday this week and Thursday normally. Thanks, everyone. I'll talk to you soon.